Now, we've covered quite a few rare weapons on this channel, and today we're going to be adding to that list, but as you can tell by the title and the thumbnail of this video, this is possibly the hardest rare weapon to farm in the entire game. But just before I give you the juicy content, we are aiming for 10,000 subscribers, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're new around here, stick around for a little bit, because you never know, you may enjoy the content I create. There's always hope. And of course, whilst you're down there, if you happen to like this particular video, do hit that like rating button as well. That would be greatly appreciated. But anyway, enough of the self-promotion. What is this so-called hardest or most difficult to farm weapon that we're going to be talking about today? Well, it's none other than the Rotten Crystal Spear. Now, you're probably thinking calling this weapon the hardest weapon to farm is a pretty big statement, but hear me out, okay? The reason why I'm considering this to be the hardest to farm weapon in Elden Ring, you actually need to get yourself deep into the middle of Alpha, which is like the city that the Halig tree is sprouting out of, and come to the inner wall site of grace. You will naturally get here if you're progressing towards the Melania fight, but it is sort of the next site of grace from the prayer room, and you need to navigate through about 50 enemies in order to get there. Not only that, but once you get to this site of grace, just round the corner, there's going to be 3 of possibly the most annoying enemies sat waiting for you to farm them. They are of course the Crystallians, 2 of which are holding the spear in question, and one of them holding the staff, which again adds to the annoyance of this farm and how difficult it is, because your main focus is obviously on the 2 holding the spear, but you've also got this annoying little motherfucker hitting you from range, also hitting you with Scarlet Rot, which just adds again to the complete annoyance of this farm. So not only is it possibly the most furthest into the game you need to be in order to start this farm, it is also possibly the most frustrating, which is why I'm depicting this as the hardest weapon to farm in the entire game. Of course, that is purely opinion. You can obviously come to this area and the first time facing these 3 idiots, you could get it first time, but the spear itself I think has a 2% drop rate, so it's most likely not going to happen unless you've got god tier luck, unlike me. But if you are like me, you're gonna be taking multiple attempts to get this thing. The best way that I found to actually farm it, if you are interested in getting this particular weapon, is to obtain the Sacred Spear or have something that has some form of area effect, so you can damage all 3 of them at the same time. The reason being is with them being Crystallians, you need to try and get their armor down so they become vulnerable to just standard attacks. If you're just going to be hitting them, your sword's going to bounce off of them and you're going to be sort of like open to multiple attacks. So if you have an area effect ability, much like the Wave of Gold, where you can damage all 3 of them at the same time, after hitting them with that skill power multiple times, they will then break their armor on the next 1 or 2 standard hits that you hit them with. Obviously, rinse and repeat this method. You can use other things like the Blasphemous Blade or like the Horaloo Stomp if you've got the Ash of War from defeating Horaloo. Yeah. Find a way to basically split them up as well. I normally lure the spears one at a time to try and obviously create a gap to take them on one by one rather than taking all 3 of them on at the same time. But that's obviously very difficult, again adding to the fact that this is one of the hardest farms, because if they get on top of you, not only do you have the 2 spear guys hitting you, but you've also got the mage at the back hitting you from a distance. So yeah, definitely not ideal to take them all on at the same time. But once you've got the technique down and you've managed to split them up whilst breaking their armor, it is fairly okay to take them down one by one. Like I said, it is a 2% drop rate to get this weapon, so although it's not the quote-unquote rarest in terms of the actual drop rate, it is still really difficult to get and can take you multiple attempts. Yes, there's 2 enemies that can drop it, but even still, it's 4% per run if you want to look at it that way. So even with that in mind, on average, you're probably going to be here for about 25 runs, if not more. And I guess the question to carry on with the rest of the series, is this weapon actually worth it, or is it a complete waste of time? It's hard to say. I personally do not like spears and the movesets that come with spears in the game. They are obviously incredibly useful for their long range ability and their long range attacks to keep people at a distance if you're using this for PvP reasons, but the Scarlet Rot effect is somewhat useful against the bosses. It's just obviously not as good as, say, Destined Death. If you're using like the Black Knife or have anything with those kind of abilities, or like bleed build up, poison build up, I would say it's not like groundbreaking in terms of the amount of damage it's doing per tick, but it does last an incredibly long time and somewhat depletes half of the health of the enemies. I should hopefully be showcasing that to you on screen. I know there was a Erdtree avatar that I took on. It was the one in the Mountain of the Giants, in fact, where they split into two, or he summons a second version of himself, and I had one of them rotted whilst focusing on the other. And yeah, it did deplete obviously quite a large chunk of his health over time whilst I was focusing on the other avatar that was trying to attack me. So those are going to be the only sort of like ways that you will notice the benefits of having this particular weapon. Just in general combat, like I say, I'm not best tailored for spears. Maybe you guys are, but if you don't enjoy using spears, I would say avoid farming this at all costs. If you really wanted Scarlet Rot on any of your weapons, you can just apply that anyway with the different affinities that you can add on to your weapons. And also with it being a build up, it does take a little while with the spears, as the attacks are slow, to have the build up sort of activate. So if you wanted to, say, use daggers or curved swords instead and have like poison or Scarlet Rot added to those, that is going to be much more beneficial to do that rather than, say, use this particular weapon. It does have some solid sort of like base damage, but realistically, there are other spears better out there and other just general weapons throughout the game that are much better than this. So although it's the hardest, the most furthest along in the game, and also possibly the most annoying farm to do, I do personally think it's also a complete waste of time. So yeah, if you're thinking about getting this weapon or feel like you're missing out, don't worry, you're really not. Don't be like me and waste about 4 or 5 hours of your life on this pathetic little thing. Yeah, just skip past it. Just enjoy your life. Have that extra time to, I don't know, go outside, touch grass. Don't be like me and sit indoors all afternoon and waste your life away. But yeah, all jokes aside, that's the beauty of this series, as I obviously have a look and see if these weapons are worth farming for you guys. So if you want to see more episodes like this, I will leave the playlist in the description down below for you to check out the rest of the weapons that we've covered so far. But hopefully this has answered your question if you were looking to get this weapon as to whether or not it's worth doing so. If it was, and if you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like rating down below. That would be extremely appreciated. It helps the channel out a lot, and it also lets me know that you enjoy these kinds of videos, so then I know that you want to see more in the future. We are obviously covering quite a lot of items in the game. I'm sure there's probably only a certain amount left that we haven't covered, so maybe we're coming to the end of the series, I don't know, but I know I've got 1 or 2 items I'm still covering in the future, so definitely keep your eyes out for future content. Obviously, if you're new around here, do consider hitting that subscribe button, that way you won't miss out on those future releases. But yeah, I think that is everything from me today, guys, so hopefully you have an amazing rest of your days, and I will catch you in the next video of whatever it is that we make. Bye bye.